Hello, everyone, and welcome to another 30 for 30. That's right, 30 episodes of Bruce Springsteen Talk, a new episode for every day in November. I am one of your hosts, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today is just one of my favorite people. I listen to Rockin the Suburbs. I try to do it every day, but I keep in my bank. I catch up. I just love you guys, Jim, and thank you. It's Jim Linehan from Rockin the Suburbs joining me, and just I'm thrilled you're here, buddy.
Oh, thank you so much, Jesse. I'm so happy to be here. I love any time we get to talk. It's always a fantastic conversation. And you and I met in person, gosh, 10 years ago?
Yeah, I was gonna say that story. You guys were traveling. I
Yeah.
can't even remember now. I think you guys were going to Austin for the festival.
Yes.
And you're in Fort Worth, and you guys had reached out because we had exchanged emails and, hey, do you want to meet for breakfast? And so I did. I met you guys this little dive in Fort Worth. We had a great breakfast. The three of us had a wonderful time. And so since then, you guys have been on my podcast. You guys have been nice enough to have me co-host podcast on your
Yep.
area. And so this is just, it is a, often my online friendships never meet in person, but I'm glad we did get at least one chance in person.
Yeah, it was a wonderful time. Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I don't have much opportunity to get down to Texas anymore. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. Um, Hence, the name of our show, Rockin the Suburbs, was based on the fact that we live among these vast suburbs of Washington, D.C. It's the metro area is mostly suburbs, so
Yeah.
that was the idea there. Um, but back then, when you and I met, yes, my co-host Patrick Foster and I, we took a musical road trip from DC down to Austin for South by Southwest, and we made stops along the way, including in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And we got to meet you there. And then back then, we were doing a podcast called Dad Rock for USA Today, but
Mhm.
circumstances were such that a couple of years after that, we both left USA Today and started our own
Yeah.
podcast. And we've been doing that, gosh, yeah, so 8 years now. We've been doing this podcast, as you mentioned, it's daily, it's 5 days a week. I don't know who made that insane decision, but we've stuck to it for the most part. I think, gosh, we've missed maybe literally, it's in the single digits, the number of days we've missed because of something happening, something coming up. But yeah, we do it, and it's great. And so when people haven't listened, the whole concept is just basically two older guys. I think it started off, we call ourselves middle aged. Now I don't know what we are, but two older guys who have just been music fans forever, and we find ourselves in a situation now as we age that the number of people we can relate to who are really into music seems to get smaller all the time. People just age out of their music obsessions, and they may still have obsessions of the music from when they were younger, but they don't really keep up.
Right.
So
Exactly.
and so if you're so we thought, if we have this podcast, then we'll get to, we'll attract other people like us, and that is exactly what has happened. And it's so cool. We don't have a huge audience, but it's a very loyal audience, and we have met many of our listeners in person, like you were talking about how you and I
Yeah.
met. But over the years, we've met many of them in person. We've actually even had events. We call them Suburbs Fest. For the past few years, we've had one or two each year since 2021, and they're incredible gatherings. We get about 30, 40 listeners who come, and we set up events with live music and do some live podcasting there, and we've gotten to really know these people by meeting them in person and then connecting with them a lot on social media and text threads and all kinds of stuff. They're great people, and it's just been a really fulfilling, rewarding experience.
Yeah. I just love the idea. And like every once in a while, I think about that some of us are like, yeah, I don't get into that new music like that Taylor Swift. You think about Taylor Swift's been doing this for X how many years?
Right.
She's not new music anymore. Yeah, and so I think I always enjoy hearing it. Some I like, some I don't, which is the way music should be. But it
Absolutely.
is fun to have that. I yeah.
And I was going to say too, although we do talk quite a bit about new music on our show, there's a lot of times when we talk about classic stuff too, or artists and that kind of thing too. It's all over the place. It's just, again, based on music fandom, and I understand that the majority of people that they develop really intense relationships with artists when they're younger. We all did. I think that's true for everybody. And some of my absolute favorites are stuff that I connected with when I was in high school, let's say. I also understand that as you get older, you just more things happen in your life. You have more responsibilities. You have like, new music at least tends to be one of those things that kind of falls by the wayside for a lot of people, and that's fine. I don't begrudge anybody for that. My feeling is always like what you like, and for the reasons that you like it. I don't. I really am try to be a non-judgmental
Yeah.
music fan, and so that's all good. But if you are one of those weirdos like me who buys a lot of records and CDs still and wants to hear the latest stuff or
Yeah.
something that I've never heard before or explore stuff. The funny thing too is like I find myself getting into whole genres that I've never really gotten into before. The last few years I've really gotten into a lot of like African music and stuff like that. Like I'm just like, oh, one of these people is like, what else is out there? You know what I mean?
Oh,
So anyway, I'm
that's
derailing
no, that's
things.
very cool.
Yeah,
And yeah, one of the other things is you guys always do a wonderful episode of Rest in Power. Chris Christopherson, when he
yeah.
passed, I at the last minute, I threw out on X, Twitter, and hey, I want to do a Chris Christopherson. So I had 3 or 4 guests join me and we talked about it. I don't do that for every artist just because I usually have a plan, but I felt that was pretty significant. You guys always do a great job of kind of giving, and the local sports station does what they call trifecta talk, which the theory is that um, celebrity deaths happen in threes. And so they always joke about it's a 3 bedroom apartment, and they use that as the excuse to talk about the person's career. And so I just want to say all of those are great, but the Chris Christopherson was one especially. It feels almost like fiction when you look what his life was.
It, I'm so interesting you said that because I was actually thinking along the same lines. It's just an amazing story. His life is an amazing story. It doesn't seem real, does it?
Yeah,
Uh, and you're down there in Texas.
yeah,
He's a hero of the Lone
yeah,
Star State, right?
yeah.
Uh,
And we made the joke, right? Like, I think you guys might have made the same joke, but about his first wife. Wait a minute. You can teach at West Point and you're going to go be a janitor?
right.
I'm gone, right? And it worked out. But yeah, yeah, I love that. And everyone, it's Rockin the Suburbs, available every day. You should listen every day, but if your life is busy, you can have it in your feed and you can go, "Oh, this one looks interesting to
Yeah,
me," and check it out. And it's very it is to quote the Highwaywomen, "I want a wide open table."
exactly. And I'll give people a tip here too. You can go to suburbspod.com and we have
Yeah.
a search there. So you can type in your favorite artist, say Bruce Springsteen, or
Yeah.
anybody you're interested in, and you can probably find an episode
Yeah,
there,
exactly.
that
Yeah.
you can listen to. In fact, I'm gonna look right now. I think we've done Springsteen how many times?
I know you covered.
Uh,
Are you guys talking about Road Diary sometime soon?
I don't know if we will or not. That
Okay.
that just came to my attention. I even missed that was happening. Yeah, here I am on the Springs. Oh my gosh, it goes on and on.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a few pages of episodes here
Yeah,
when we
we
talk
have
about
yeah.
Springsteen. So
Yeah.
definitely, absolutely one of our favorites.
Yes.
I know I absolutely am confident I'm speaking for my co-host Patrick
Yeah.
as well on that. One of our favorite artists ever,
Hmm.
and we definitely talk about Springsteen quite a bit.
Yeah.
And also one of the artists I've probably seen the most. And when we get into this river talk, I'll
Yeah.
kind of give you my Springsteen
Good.
backstory a little bit. Yeah.
All right. So I need to brag about Jim because when I put the call out that I needed guests to join me, Jim said, "I'm there." I said,
Yep.
"Okay, what album?" I don't care. Just you tell me what album you need me to talk about, and I will. And I was like, "Oh man, thank you." It was like a wild card. Joker's a wild. Jim was like, "Okay, whatever you need." And so I said, "No one's picked the river." Really? Okay, done. The first question I've been asking people is why they picked this album, but I just explained why you picked it. It was
Yeah.
assigned you. But tell me why you were happy
Yeah.
that this one got assigned to you then.
So first I'll say the reason why I said give me what you got is partly because I know what it's like to put things like this together, and hats off to you, Jesse, for doing this in the first place. 30 episodes in 30 days, like that's something I can relate to, right? Because we do
Yeah.
something similar to that all the time. So I know how hard that is. And I felt like maybe I could make it just a little bit easier for you to just take what nobody else has picked, right? And
Yeah.
fill that in. So there was that. Then personally, it was also I like a challenge, right? So it was like,
Yeah.
what if I get something one of the albums I'm not super familiar with? Well, then you know what? I'll listen to it for a week and I'll have something to say and that'll be fun. But then you said nobody's taken the river, and I was like, I think I responded, "Oh my God, that might be my favorite Springsteen album." And
You did say that. Yes.
yes, and it's funny. I listened to it again last night, and I was like, "This is my favorite Springsteen album." So how the universe works in strange ways, right? So that
Yeah.
worked out great. But let me tell you about this. I came to this album late in my
Okay.
Springsteen fandom, right? So it came out in 1980. I was 13 in 1980. This was not the kind of music I was listening to, with the exception of Hungry Heart, which got a lot of radio airplay. 13 years old, I'm a top 40 kid. That's what I
Yeah.
listened to, right? And
Absolutely.
just whatever's on the radio. Yes, I knew Hungry Heart. I'm sure I liked Hungry Heart, but I liked pretty much anything that was like pop music of that time. A few years later, probably like everybody, then you start to really develop your favorites artists. And I would say even then, when I was in high school, I don't know, I got into a little bit of kind of the new wave stuff happening at the time, but the new wave slash mainstream, right? Men at
Right.
Work or Squeeze or like bands like that, like the bands that you at least heard. I wasn't going too far off.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, which was not a place where you could really had access to a lot of underground kind of stuff, right? But that I could already sense musically that's where my head was at. I wanted the stuff that maybe was a little bit weird or whatever.
Sure.
And then when I got to college, definitely a road I went down, punk and alternative and all that kind of stuff. But I did get Born in the USA. I want to say I probably got it on cassette when that came out because it's like
Sure.
everybody bought Born in the USA, right? And for
Yeah.
good reason. It's a great album. And talk about radio hits. God, there were like 7 of them or something off that record.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So Born in the USA. But other than that, I would say I was a casual Springsteen fan quite a while. I remember in college I got Tunnel of Love because it came out. It was new then. And I really liked that. And it hit me at a point of time where that's a pretty deep record. Now it hit me at a point in time in college when I could appreciate that a little bit
Right.
more. And also in college, I then went back and got the Born to Run album and really liked that. And this was again when I was really getting into music exploration. So that felt like that's a record I should have because
Right.
it's such an important record. But again, like I was not as obsessive. I didn't go back and get all the Springsteen stuff. I just had the tent poles. And then I did see him on the Tunnel of Love tour. That was my first time I saw Springsteen
Oh,
live. And
nice.
I'm not sure that was the best first time experience to see Springsteen live. That was a weird tour. There was this big stage production and stuff. So I remember liking it, but I don't remember being blown away the way maybe I felt I should be
Okay.
at a Springsteen show. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
With all the anticipation of how great he is as a live performer. So then fast forward all the way to the 2000s, what would have been late 2000s, was Working on a Dream tour.
Right.
I'm in DC, working in Washington, DC. A coworker of mine who is a Springsteen obsessive, he and I decided to go to get tickets to this show. And in anticipation of that, I was like, I really should know his whole catalog better than I do. So I went to a used CD store and I tried to fill in the gaps. And at that point, I think maybe the only albums I had were Born to Run, Born in the USA. I can't remember. I might have had Nebraska, but Born in the USA definitely. Tunnel of Love. I bought the Human Touch, Lucky
And Lucky
Town,
Town. Yeah.
because again, I bought them when they came out because it was
Right.
like new. And I do actually really like those records, but it's funny that I would have those and not some other more
Yeah, it
important ones.
does. Yeah.
I had The Rising. I might have had Magic, I think, at that point.
Okay.
So you can see there were some gaps there. And
Yeah.
two of the gaps, with the biggest gap was I didn't have Darkness on the Edge of Town. I didn't have The River. I go to this UCD store and I just go see whatever they have. And I got Darkness. and I got the River, which I hold here right now. Look, 9.99 for the double CD. It's a pretty
Nice.
good deal, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I got that. I probably got some other stuff too. And of course, I loved Darkness on the Edge of Town. Like, where has this been all my life? What was it? What have I been doing?
Yeah.
But I was blown away by the River, and I'll tell you
Yeah.
why. And now I have the seat. I have the vinyl copy too, as was listened to last night. Oh, and I also, I don't know if you could like you can see up if you can see up the
Yes,
wall
I
on the
can.
wall. I have a
Yes. There.
framed River and Darkness album
Yes,
covers
absolutely.
up there too. That's how much I love these records now, and it was so
Yeah.
satisfying in a way, maybe to even to discover these later on. I don't know. It was like it's like when you think you know something and then there's more and it's so good.
Right.
It's like it's
Yes.
wow, this is amazing. I didn't think I'd have these experiences again. I was an old man. But anyway,
Yeah.
here's what I love about the River because I think although I really try to explore a lot of different kinds of music. The core, the thing I really love is just like a good pop song. Just like a
Yes.
3 minute pop song that's just done really crafted really well and it's tight, and it's got a good hook and a good melody line, and somebody crafted the background vocals just right or the hand claps. The movie that thing you do.
Yeah.
That's to me, that says it all right there. Like you just have this one great song and everybody instantly connects to it and it's so pure and good and there's this magic in 3 minutes, right? We learn more in a
Yeah.
3 minute song, baby, than we ever
Yeah,
learned in
in
school, right?
school. Yeah,
It's like,
and one of the things you guys do is you do perfect pop
yeah,
episodes where someone will come, and we did a whole episode like Rosalita is one of I talked about
yeah,
Not Good Enough for You from the box set, and there are just perfect pop songs like Katrina and the Waves, Walking on Sunshine.
yeah,
It's just that you hear that, you immediately smile, and you get yeah. So I get that.
totally, 100%. The River, although there's some exceptions here, but for the most part, this is just pure pop music. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
amazing. One song after another that's just fun, short. He's not there. There's a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, these are not the big Jungle Land type narratives and experiences, right? They're just short, tight. The lyrics are for the most part pretty direct, and you can understand what he's talking about. Now, you can interpret things like any piece of art different ways
yeah,
or reflect on it, reflect on your life and that, and all that's great. These
yeah,
are really well written songs in that regard, but they don't require a ton of interpretation, right?
yeah,
To me, it feels like I know in reading about it, the recording of this, they really were trying to replicate the live music experience because, of course, that's what he's known for. And I think they did a really good job. It just sounds great. It sounds fun. It does to some extent feel like you're there. You know,
yeah,
I think there are songs here that show you that predict Born in the USA in some ways
yeah,
because that's for the most part also a great pop record. But the production on Born in the USA, it's very 80s. It's very
sure.
slick, glossy, and I'm not I don't mean that as a criticism. That was the time and I
Yeah,
love that
and
record and I listened to it and but this one is a little bit rawer
yes,
and I there's just so much there's so much I love and I
yeah,
think you can hear too I think you can hear Steven Van Zandt's influence on
yes,
this because if you know him now and excuse me if you know him now and you listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage hang on one second
sure.
sorry about that. You listen to Little Steven's Underground Garage, you really get a sense of of the music he loves, right? And
Yeah,
so at this point in the E Street Band's existence, this is where the E Street Band is really,
yeah,
coming together, right? And Little Steven, I know he was a big influence on Born to Run, but by this point you got to think just part of he's just what's what I'm trying to get at. He's like a part of Bruce at this point, I think.
yeah, and that the Little Steven documentary that they had about his career, which is another talk about a wild career that his political and stuff. They talk about that, and there is this line in Road Diary where little Steven, you can tell how close they are because, and this has been a clip they released, he made Steven musical director, right? And
Yeah.
little Steven does air quotes like 40 years too late, but oh, whatever. And the reality is, I think he, as long as he's been part of the E Street Band, that's been his job.
Yes, totally.
And he, when he talks about when he played Silvio, he said, I knew that role. The only guy who can talk power to the boss.
Yeah.
And it's just true.
Yeah, totally. So I think I don't know for sure, but I get
Yeah.
I get a sense here that there's
Yeah.
a certain amount of Little Steven influence in The River. Obviously, all songs written by Bruce Springsteen. We wouldn't have it
Yeah.
any other way. They probably listen. It's like the Bobby Jean. We like the same bands.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
they're into the same stuff, right? Um, so this record, and I'll say one more thing about the record as a whole. It's a double album. Um, I would say I went through it again last night. Probably at least three-quarters of them are up-tempo, fun. You'd call them party songs. A couple friends were calling them sort of frat rock. I don't know.
Yeah.
That feels a little bit like it diminishes it in some way, but yeah, there you could put this album on at a party, and
Yeah.
maybe everybody goes and refreshes their drink during Independence Day or something like that. Great
Yeah.
song, but it's a song you should sit and listen to. But for the rest of the time, everybody's going to have a great time. There's going to just be like fun and music in the air listening to the River
Yeah.
album. And but it is interesting that Bruce, and I know, and apparently he really labored over this, right? There's even the story about how it was originally going to be a single album called The Ties That Bind, and they even
Yeah.
had that sequenced and ready to go, and he was like, "No, I'm not. It's not there," and went back and recorded more songs, and they recorded for 18 months on this, Jesse. 18
Yeah.
months.
And
Nobody can do that today. Nobody
no.
can do anything even close to that today, right?
And what else is, I don't know if you were able to see the tour where he did it in all in a row, right?
Yes. Look,
Eh,
here's my CD
Yeah.
of that show I went to. You know how you can get the
Yeah.
CDs of the show? Yes,
Yeah.
where he did the River in full.
Yeah.
January 29th, 2016. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is just you, I just loved everything about this. And I agree that it is so interesting, the the choices he's making. I think there is this slower songs, faster songs, but it's just so well done and crafted. And I, one of those hypothetical, you can only bring one album, right? And I, Tunnel Love probably would be, but I think if for just pure diversity, if you couldn't do tracks, The River would be a good choice because it gets a little bit of everything that Bruce wants to do. We have the angst with his father. We're going to talk about Independence Day. We have
Hmm.
Out in the Street, which is just a great pop song. The River for sentimental reasons, and his first top 40 hit.
Right.
So yeah, it is. There is just a lot of just goodness in this.
Yeah, and you mentioned like what I find so interesting about it too, and it's such a great listening experience. Like I said, you can have it on when people are over and you can
Yeah,
listen to it that way, or have it on
yeah,
while you're at the gym or going for a run or doing the dishes or whatever. It's that kind of record that just fits in a lot of different circumstances, but it's also a great sit down and listen to album too.
yes,
And what I find so interesting is the highs can be so high. Like there's songs that are just so much joy in there.
hmm,
Out in the Street, for
yeah,
example. Like that's just a fantastic song about, what we all, want in life, which is work hard, play hard, kind of thing, right? And
yes. So
and
that's,
go ahead.
no, my son is, his first show was that we went up to Oklahoma City to see The River, right? And he was talking about, I really like that song where he gets on the crowd and they crowd surf in my hungry heart. Okay. He said, but the song that really struck, he says, is, and he starts getting quotes to go out in the street. He goes, I don't care what your job is, whether you're the highest CEO or the lowest person working in the warehouse, every one of us on Monday morning are thinking about Friday.
That's right.
That line, right? And the foreman calls time. I've already got Friday on my mind. He said, that is universal, Dad. And I smile every time I hear that line. And on Monday mornings, I think of that, right?
Oh, totally, totally. And I was going to say too, like, there's somewhat of a little tradition in rock music, pop music of those
Yeah,
kinds of songs. And I think specifically
yeah,
of like in the 60s, the Easy Beats had the song Friday on My Mind, and
yeah,
that's a great song. And then in the 80s, you had Loverboy with Working for the Weekend, and you had,
yeah,
which would have come a little later than this, but it's a regular theme, and it's what kind of rock and roll is about, right? It's like letting loose,
yeah,
cutting loose. Now is the time when you get to be yourself,
right.
which is what makes this song even a little bit deeper probably than the others too. Is it isn't just about that I get to fun, but it's like that I can be my real self away from the grind, right?
Yeah,
And that's again that's the Springsteen magic of his songwriting is that it he takes it always just a not always almost always just a little bit deeper to give
yeah,
you something to really grab onto. Out on the Street, fantastic song. I think now I will say there's a couple of songs that are just pure fun, where it's like there's not that much
yeah,
to them other than just like I want to do a
yeah.
rock song, like random. Yeah,
Yeah,
Sherry
Sherry Darling
Darling.
is just silly.
Yes, yes.
I love an Ally McBeal pre-Iron Man, him singing a version of it. Why am I drawing a blank on the actor?
Oh, Robert Downey.
Yeah, Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
There is a version of him doing Sherry Darling, and it's great. And I know when we were dating, my wife and I, like the highways free, this idea that you just there
Yes,
is just hitting the car. It is a great road trip song.
absolutely. I got some beer and the highway's free. I got
Yeah,
you and you got me. It's great. But even then but the whole thing with the mother is like
yeah,
it's causing him pain, right? Like this
yes,
relationship
yeah.
it could be better than it is because he's got this one
Yeah, like if
irritant,
she
right?
she wins if she just shuts up.
Yes,
I mean, okay, just quit talking. I
right.
will go, and they were good.
It's so
Um,
good. But then there's like Ramrod, there's I'm a Rocker. Those are just fun, goofy
yes,
songs.
exactly.
You can
Yeah,
look and you can look, but you better not touch. It's just a
yeah,
silly song too.
yeah,
So there's a bit of Bruce really being like, I don't have to be the poet all the time.
yeah,
Sometimes I can just write fun rock songs, and it's like I can be. It's like quarter to three, right? It's like he loves that song, and that's just a fun rock song. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's like I get to be that too sometimes, and I love that about it. But what I was going to get to is though these slow songs that he puts in intermittently, and then side four really gets
yeah,
you there. Um, there's like I said, the highs are really high, the lows are really low. It's man, it's this is absolutely a roller coaster. It's like look,
yeah,
you go from where is it here? You go from I Want to Marry You into the river, right? So
yeah.
here's a song that's Marry You, which has that kind of Latin feel. It feels very 60s
Like in
stuff.
live, he had the maracas he was
Yes,
doing. Yeah,
yes. And it's just a really nice, it's almost a girl group kind of arrangement
yeah,
and song to it. It
exactly.
feels very much like a hopeful love song.
Yeah,
And then you go to the river, which is like the opposite. It's, oh my God, the pain of this guy's heart, right? Oh,
yeah,
it's just unbelievable. And I will say the river, which I believe to be it's impossible to say but like one of his greatest songwriting achievements.
yeah,
There is a story in that song that is said, that is told so succinctly, but so vividly that you don't have, Jesse, I don't know, I feel like anybody can relate to that, whether it's like there but for the grace of God go I, right?
yeah,
Sometimes everybody could be like, that could have happened to me.
yeah,
Um, but what's beautiful about that song is, of course, you get the gut punch in the second verse with "Then I got Mary pregnant, and man, that was
yeah,
all she wrote." And then the great couplet here, "And for my 19th birthday, I got a union card and a wedding coat." Right? Here's a guy who realizes the what he's done has a profound effect on the rest of his life, right? But the beauty of that song is that it tells this story, and you feel for this guy and this situation he and Mary are in, right? Don't need to
Yeah.
discount her, right? But it's told from his point of view. But then it has that flashback scene with the bridge. But I remember us riding in my brother's car, her body tan and wet down at the reservoir. At night on them banks, I'd lie awake and pull her close just to feel each breath she'd take. Oh my God. You've already put the knife in, now twist it, right? Like he wishes he could go back. He wishes that he could go back to that time, live that life, and do things differently, right?
Yeah.
Oh God, it's a killer. And then of course when it talks about when he ends it all with dream a lie if it don't come true, or is it something worse? Oh, I don't know. That has to be up there with one of the greatest songs ever by anybody, I think. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and it is that, is this a successful marriage? In real life, it is. You know
Right.
that this was based partially and on his sister, and they are still married, and he talks about that, where she married her cowboy and they go, because I just hit, my wife and I, 40 years of marriage.
Oh,
Eh,
congratulations.
Thank you. And we had a wonderful time. We went for a week in New England for the first time ever, and saw Vermont and New Hampshire, and a day in Maine, and had a great time. But everything's not perfect during our 40 years, right? So I think that's interesting. Couple of memories. I think it was Louisville, where someone had a sign that said, "It's my 19th birthday, play the river." And he did. And I'm like, have you heard the song? Is this? Yes, I realize they have a 19th birthday, but that just does not seem like that would be what I would want to hear to celebrate my birthday. I also have a thought that the wedding coat was bought from a thrift store. It was a used wedding coat.
Probably, right?
Yeah, it feels that way.
And he talks about they go to the courthouse and all that. You can
Yeah,
picture it. You can absolutely picture it, right?
yeah.
It
And there was not this sense of joy,
no,
right? It wasn't a,
no,
and I think most of us, I have been to weddings where the bride's pregnant, right? Circumstances changed, and okay, we're now, but it's this joyous celebration
right.
anyway. This truly is just this sense of doom, right?
Yeah, yes, it's an obligation, right? This is what you
Yeah,
have to do now. And when the part about the throwing in the union card there too is a nice little touch too, because
yeah,
it's like now you weren't able to mature slowly on the path that you should. Now
yeah,
you are an adult with real responsibilities, and you're going to
yeah,
have to work every day at this job, and you're going to have to
yeah.
support this family that you now have. And at 19, I don't know about you, that's not something I
Well,
would
and
have
like,
handled very well. That would have been really
you
difficult.
you can write this whole story, like, did he want to go get an education? Had he planned to go to college? But now then there's no, you got a union card and a wedding coat.
Totally. And I think it's funny when I mentioned the flashback, and this is where Bruce is such a specific writer. He remembers riding in his brother's car. He doesn't, it wasn't his car. So you even get the
Right.
sense that this guy didn't have any money, right?
Yeah.
That's when he went on dates or whatever, he had to borrow his brother's car, right?
Yeah.
Just really nice details like that. And no, but you're right. So my wife and I celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary this
Okay.
year. Um, and you're right. I don't think anybody should expect that that marriage or any kind of relationship that lasts a long time is just pure bliss all the time. What
Yeah.
I find interesting about the River album, and I think I read somewhere where this was like he was really trying to start to explore these themes,
Right.
marriage and commitment and so on, is that, which by the way, which comes in way bigger in Tunnel of Love, which can end
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
album. But anyway, again, the almost kind of bipolar nature of this album. A lot of the faster, sweeter songs or upbeat songs have a sort of sweetness to them, and
Yeah.
a lot of hope and a lot of like young love, and that and those feelings come through in the song of the excitement of
Yeah.
infatuation, of
Yeah.
flirtation, of young romance, all that kind of stuff. And then some of the heavier stuff is about now we're a few years in.
Yeah.
and and it is tough. It can be difficult, and it's a whole different thing that you didn't necessarily plan on in some ways. Like it takes, work, and things are not just always going to be that way that they felt when you were courting, right? To use the old
Yes,
term, right?
exactly.
It's a whole
And
different thing. But I will say this,
yeah.
Hungry Heart is one of Springsteen's great tricks, like he does in a song like Glory Days, which is that he takes what you think at the beginning, when you think at first listen, because you listen to it, is a fun, happy song.
Yeah.
And then when you start to really listen to it, it's, wait a second, this is not a happy song.
No.
It's a sad song dressed up in
y-
happy clothing, right?
Yeah.
I was telling friends, it's the Hungry Heart is the most joyous song you'll ever hear about a man who runs out on his family.
Yeah, exactly. He abandons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that Sylvan Groth and I, because one of the other podcasts I do is a Perfectly Good podcast where we're going through every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. And we go to themes that John seems to write adult love songs. Like a lot of his songs are about the problems and the joy that you're having in a relationship. And I think Bruce explores that too in this, and it's really well done. I want to talk about Independence Day, and
Okay.
because I was I was a casual fan of Independence Day. It was okay, right? And when I saw the first, I ended up going to 4 shows on this river tour, and
Hmm.
I watched this, and here's Bruce in his 60s,
Mm-hmm.
probably older than his father was when he wrote that song.
Mm-hmm.
And the dichotomy of a song he wrote as a youngster now being sung at an age where he's seeing it from the father's perspective really struck me. And also, and my lovely bride always hates when I bring this up, so luckily she doesn't listen, is this was her and my son's relationship in high school and college. Just there was just tense. They both loved each other, but they just and now then she, yeah, but we're great now. I know. I'm just saying at the time.
Yeah, that happens, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
and just it after seeing that live, it has truly, and you always hype, but I would say if I'm putting list of favorite Springsteen songs, Independence would be in there. And as he said, two people who adore each other but just don't know how to talk. Any thoughts on that?
Oh man. I'll just say it's very relatable to me. My father he just passed about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
4 years ago. 4 years
I,
ago. It was the COVID year, although it was not from COVID. But anyway.
yeah. I lost my mom just in July of this year. So yes, I
Okay.
condolences. Yeah.
And I never had a we never had a bad relationship, but we never had a close relationship either.
Yeah.
And I think this is maybe true for maybe this was fairly common in our generation. I don't know.
Yeah.
There was just always a distance.
Right.
He wasn't he would try, but I don't think he was terribly interested in the stuff I was interested in, and vice versa. We just didn't
Right.
have a kind of close relationship. Probably the only thing that saved us at all was sports, and that's
Right.
a cliche, but it's true.
It's true.
We could talk about sports, so that was it. But other than that, we weren't like best pals,
Right.
father and son, and so I can relate in many ways to this song. Again, there was no animosity between us or anything like that, but it just I was going to go off and do my own thing
Yeah.
in this world, and that was it. And to a large extent, I really did. I charted a path that was different from my parents and my extended family back in Ohio, and just went
Hmm.
off and did my own thing. And so yeah, I can definitely relate to the person in this story. I do you get also get overtones that it's a death song too? Like I feel that way, or at least maybe it hit me. Maybe that hit me when my dad died or something. Like I feel
Yeah.
like it's a saying goodbye. It is a saying goodbye kind of song
Yeah.
too, that I think could also be relatable in that context too. I don't
I
know.
do see that. And it is that Papa go to bed now, right?
Yeah, right.
Is this idea that, and you hear Bruce talking about he'd come home and his father would be at the dining table, the kitchen table, smoking, right? And the lights off and that burning ember, you see that, and just this, I don't want to have this fight again.
Yeah.
I don't want to, just please. And it also, I think, helps me that when he later tells the story, that his father coming to see him before his first son was born, and he tells the story that his dad drove all night and to see him, had breakfast beers because that's how we roll, and his dad saying, "You were good to us and I wasn't very good to you." And Bruce saying, "It was enough." He said, "I knew what my father was saying is don't make the mistakes I did." And I just thought that was, and when you throw that with this story, it's just pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really want to get into this that much, but I wonder, Jesse, though, I mean, as a parent, though, how do you look at a song like this as a parent? Are there things that you should learn on
Yeah,
how you deal with your own kids, right? You don't have and I always think, I hope that I mentioned that there wasn't a lot of closeness in my family, and I hope that I
yeah,
did better, but it's impossible to say how your kids view things or what they experience. And so
right.
so you can sympathize a bit with the father in this story too. Everybody's just trying to do
Yeah,
what they can do, right?
exactly. And this idea that I love, long time coming, where your mistakes be your own, right? The idea that you try to teach your children, hey, this is where I effed up. You're gonna F up, but please don't do these mistakes. And yeah, I love and I think that's why it spoke to me so much, because I felt like he was the father when he's singing this.
It's so
Yeah,
interesting.
it
Yeah.
is. It feels, and it
Mm.
is really good. We've already talked about, is there any others that you specifically want to visit?
Yes.
And is there any songs, talk about some you want to mention, and then I'd love to know, is there any you feel like don't work as well?
Oh, I always hate to do that
Mm,
because it's going to be
I
somebody's
get it.
favorite
Yeah.
song. And
And I will
so,
tell you, one of the things we do, Jim, on our discussion, I've done this with a couple other people on doing this 30 for 30, and Sylvan and I always do this when we're talking to John Hyatt. We're like, we'll give a song a one, and we're like, and if this is your favorite John Hyatt song or you think we're full of crap, email us, please. I want to hear someone
yeah.
talk about why they love this song.
Okay, so two things. I'll address that first.
Okay.
Probably I won't even name the song, but I'll just say the song I like the least on this
Yeah.
album. There's 20 songs on this album, and
Yeah.
I think probably 19 of them are great. And then if there's one that I can live without, I'll just say it's the longest song on here. I feel like
Okay.
it's not in the spirit of the album.
Okay.
It goes on a long time. There's a song that's 8.5 minutes long. It goes
Yes.
on a long time to the point where I'm just, let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
Let's move on a little bit. So anyway, there's that.
For what it's worth, I really enjoyed it live when I watched that. But I don't know that people have felt that same way. I do love the idea. The joke is, Bruce, Zappos is there now. Do you not know Zappos is there?
Yeah, yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
yes.
Okay, it's not my
Okay.
favorite, but
No, okay.
not to mean that I would have. Honestly, though, it's not like I hit skip when it comes
Yeah,
on.
exactly. Yeah.
Even what any of us, we all have our
Yeah.
rankings of songs. I think any of us, what we would consider our own personal lesser Springsteen
Yeah.
songs, are still good songs.
Yeah, like
That's how
for
great a
me,
songwriter is.
I'll say I like Ramrod, but it's not one of my favorites. And I know
Mhm.
other people that go, "Oh, I love that." And seeing the picture of him dancing with his mom when at one of the shows, it is great. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay, so there's two more things I want to say about this album.
Yeah.
Let's make it three real quick. First of
Okay.
all, I just want to call out that it opens with The Ties That Bind, which is a great rocker of a song. But what's really cool about this song is that 12-string, jangly guitar.
Yes.
And again, it puts you in the mind of this is kind of a 60s pop record. It sounds like the
Yeah.
Birds, kind of thing.
Right.
And you have to think, I'm speculating here, but I almost wonder if like yeah, I think Bruce is a little bit. You almost wonder if maybe there was a Tom Petty sort of feeling here.
Okay,
I
I
could
can
do.
see
I could do
that.
I could do a song like that too,
Yeah,
and here we go. But I love that 12-string guitar in that song. I just think it's incredible.
yeah,
And as a guy who's a huge fan of REM, that became my band then when I went to college and stuff, and it
yeah.
has throughout my life now. I love that jangly guitar kind of stuff. I'm a
Right.
sucker for that. I just love it. Anyway, my I'm not gonna say this is my favorite song on the album because I've talked about The River is probably it, or
Yeah.
On the Street is probably those are the top two, I think, but maybe third, or the song that I just get so psyched on when it comes up is Crush on You.
Yeah.
And the reason being is that again, I'm the kind of music fan who when I got into punk, I really got into punk.
Right.
And that became I listened to for a while. And probably my favorite band of all time is The Clash. Like I'm really
Yeah.
big into punk, and I feel like Crush on You is the most punk rock that
Yes.
Springsteen has ever sounded, right? And I know that he was a fan of a lot of that stuff. And this came
Right.
out at the right time for that. I know he hung out a bit in the Bowery and he loved a lot of stuff because it was that spirit of rock and roll that he just loved, and that's what punk was at that time. And I know supposedly he wrote Hungry Heart
For the
for the
Ramones.
Ramones,
Yeah.
and he was into that kind of stuff. And Crush on
Yeah.
You, really, it sounds like it could be Johnny Thunder's song. It
Yeah.
has just that, those guitar lines, that little guitar, understated sort of guitar riff that's in the chorus, and just that kind of raw kind of feeling to it. And then his vocal on it is just absolutely,
Yeah.
that could be Joe Strummer. It's, I love Crush on You. I just love Crush on You. That's a rock song.
It
So,
is.
so there's that. Now, the one thing I also want to address is I talked a little about side four.
Yeah.
Side four is a downer of a side, but it does, wait, that does kick off. I'm looking at my CD, so I got to
Yeah.
remember. It kicks off
But
with Ramrod. There's only
right.
four songs on side four.
Ramroad, Price You Pay, Drive All Night, Wreck on the Highway.
All right. So this is a funny thing for this album being such kind of a party record that it ends with three slow songs.
Yeah.
What's really cool, I think, is I already think he's starting to channel what would become Nebraska.
Yes.
Because even the feel of these songs, Wreck on the Highway, is particular as a closer, that could be on the Nebraska album. It's so stripped down
Yeah.
and naked, right? And the theme of it too, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like it could be right there with Highway Patrolman, State Trooper,
Yeah.
Nebraska, Atlantic City, all those Wreck on the Highway. It's, man, that's a killer of a song. I love that song, but it's like you could see where his head was going, right?
Yeah. And I hope you've read the Deliver Me from Nowhere, the Warren Zane book. I recommend it strongly if you haven't. I think you guys talked about it in one of your book club episodes. But yeah, I just think it definitely belongs on Nebraska. I'm glad it's here, but you
Yeah,
absolutely see that feeling of the stolen car, used
right.
cars, right? This it is wonderful. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
Stolen Car, another one too. That could be on the Nebraska album
yeah.
as well. God, Stolen
Yeah.
Car, that's a fascinating song. Talk about a song where a guy's just dying
Yeah.
inside, right? That's a little gem of a song that you really have to listen to. And I said this before too, that this is an album that you can just sit and listen to. And there's, in those slow songs in particular, like you really don't have a choice. You got to stop what you're doing
Yeah.
and listen to these songs because they're gonna get you, man.
Yeah, and I think one of the nice things is there's almost a undercover. Like you throw in these strong pop songs where you can sing, you know, the on out on the street
Yeah,
and I got a crush on, and sing
right.
along. And then in between it, he slips these wonderful little character studies. This just, um, you know, um, Western Stars is a collection of short stories to me, but he's always done that. And God, years ago, I talk about this sometimes. I wish I could find it, where for April Fool's Day, someone did a whole article about Bruce being a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. and they took all his albums and put them as either collections of short stories or novels and had fake little descriptions about what each one was. And I said, in another world, that's exactly what he would be. In this
Yeah.
multiverse, like he would have been just this well-known writer.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And they're making a movie about the Nebraska
Yes.
era
Yeah.
of Springsteen. I don't know. I'm really curious about how that's going to work out.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nebraska. That's for another episode you have. I'm sure somebody really
Yes, it is.
great
Oh,
to
yeah, it
talk
is.
about that. But it's a
Yeah.
master. That's a masterpiece of a record.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you brought up Western Stars too. And I'll be really interested when you guys discuss that, because when that came out a few years ago, I don't think I fully grasped it. I don't think I could get my arms around it. But over the years, I think that's a really impressive work. Like that's a real piece of work, that album, you know.
Yeah.
Some of the others that he's done in recent years, you can tell are like a collection of songs put together,
Yeah.
pieced together that he
Right.
wanted to get on. He wanted to get studio versions of, or he wanted to get them down, get them out there. But Western Stars feels like something that was very deliberately crafted and put together top to bottom. But anyway, that's for another time as well. But I'm
Well,
really
love
impressed
that.
with that album.
All right. Any final thoughts on the river? And tell us
Ah,
how people can reach you.
okay, I think you've heard all my thoughts, but it is my favorite
That's nice.
Springsteen album, and so many of his albums I love. So that's something.
Mhm.
So listen to Rockin the Suburbs when you can. Like I said, probably, for somebody who hasn't listened to it, because we've done almost 2,000 episodes now. Um, Probably what I would suggest people do is, like I said, go to suburbspod.com and just search there for episodes that you might enjoy. You can take any band that you like, any artist you like, put the name in the search field, and then see what comes up. And you'll probably find something there. My co-host Patrick Foster and I, we do it. We used to, for about the first 1,500 episodes, we would be on every episode together, and then I don't know, something happened where just we were crushed under the weight of it finally, and
Yeah.
now we divide and conquer a lot more. So he'll do some episodes, I'll do some episods, and then we'll do something together. So I'm not necessarily, you won't necessarily hear me on every episode, but that's okay. My co-host is smarter than I am, and
Well,
he has a vast record collection and music knowledge, and you will enjoy listening to him as
and
well.
yeah, and I also think you've developed a deep bench of you have some really wonderful people that help host,
Yeah,
will guest star, guest host, they'll do some fill-in episodes, and the a totally outdated pop culture guest host in the term of Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, which many
right.
people will not know what that is anymore, but I do think that happens. And so it's always fun. Yeah, I would recommend either look for your favorite artist or do Perfect Pop. If you want to hear, those are some fun episodes because you guys and your guests do a deep dive on just two or three songs
Right.
about why you think this is a perfect pop song. And that's always a lot of fun.
Yeah, and excuse me, I'm glad you brought up the community, as we say. We really do. One of the things we love about the show is we really do encourage audience participation. So we love it when people call in. We have a phone line people can call in, but really what people do more of now is they record like a voice memo and send it in to us, email it to us, and they talk about like the Perfect Pop series. They will nominate a song and talk about it, or when we do our monthly new music series, that's really listener driven. People calling in and saying, "Here's the song that I discovered last month," kind of thing. We love that. One of the reasons I love your show, and I think why we connect so much, is we both do fan driven
Yes.
podcasts, right? And I personally think that's important because the world doesn't need another critic. Like that what we want is people who love music for whatever reason, however it touches them, right? We want to hear that. And so that's what we really try to make the show about. I always tell people we're here to showcase the stuff we love, and we don't we don't spend time talking about things we don't like.
Yeah.
We want to put good into the world
Yeah.
with it. And I'm not trying to pump it up too much. Like that's really
But that's
our
important.
attitude about it.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, we would have a bigger audience, I think, if we trash things because that just attracts people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's human nature, but we don't want to do that. We want it to be a positive show. So if there's something we don't like, we just don't talk about it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And if somebody else calls in and talks about something that doesn't hit us the same way, we still champion that. Like we want
Yeah.
that person's voice to come through, and so that's great.
I want to say thank you because someone just recently said that something too, and it really meant a lot to me. When I started this thing, there were no other Springsteen podcasts. There's now 3 or 4 out there. Some get a lot more downloads than I do. They get bigger name guests, and I'm happy for them. I enjoy listening to it. There's one from the UK, there's guys from Vegas. I love them all. My point has been always is I want to let fans share their stories of why they love Bruce or other musicians. I love when someone comes on to explain why they love the Rolling Stones or Aretha Franklin.
Right.
It's just I love that passion. So thank you, my friend.
Can I just want to close the loop on one thing I said earlier
Yeah,
for your listeners, which is that I said I was a casual fan for a long time of Bruce Springsteen, and then I prepared to go to that show on the Working on a Dream
yeah,
tour, and coming off of that one time I'd seen him before, which is the Tunnel of Love tour, which was a different kind of tour. When I went to that Working on a Dream show, and we were in the pit, by the way, we won the lottery or whatever. We got one of the chosen ones, and we got to go down, and we
yeah,
were really close to the stage. That's when I became a fanatic.
yeah,
That was such a unbelievable show, and Clarence was still with them then.
yeah,
Um, that was such an unbelievable show, and from that point on, it's now I'm really into Springsteen, right? And I tell
yeah,
people all the time, I have friends who don't get it. I don't understand why this guy's as popular as he is, or
yeah,
I'm missing it, whatever. And again, that's fine.
yeah.
Music doesn't have to hit everybody the same way, and it shouldn't, honestly. How boring
Right.
would that be? But I'm always telling people like, go to a show,
Yeah, go to a
and
show.
you'll
You'll
be
get it.
transformed, right?
You'll get it. It really is
Yeah.
that matter.
And since
Jim,
then,
like,
I've been to several
yeah,
Springsteen shows, and just including when we talked about on your show on the recent tour. Again, I got down in the pit, and I was just so impressed at the energy he still brings. It's just unbelievable. The guy is rock and roll. He just is. So
he is. You could arguably make the greatest live act of all times, and that's all respect to James Brown and everyone else. But just there's something about that. I went to ELO, Jeff Lynne's ELO, just a couple weeks ago. Had a great time, but there's something about a Bruce show that it's 2 hours and 45 minutes, and cynical fans are going, "Why is it so short?" It's just like
exactly.
yeah. Jim Linehan,
Okay.
thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate it. Listeners, go check out the podcast. Go check out their radio. They actually do a Rockin the Suburbs radio. The different wonderful people do a wide range of shows. No matter what your genre you want to hear, there's a show about it done by fans for love. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Listeners, be safe, be kind. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks, Jesse.